to better lives for all. New Lotte, the power of a better world. New today, better tomorrow. Lotte.
Coming up on Arirang News. On day 4 of his visit in Washington, South Korean President Yoon Suk Yeol is addressing a joint session at the United States Congress. He is expected to give a speech in English, looking back on 70 years of Seoul-Washington ties and laying out a blueprint for the two allies. The Yoon-Biden summit secures a landmark deal, the Washington Declaration, extending deterrence against the North's nuclear threat and the development of a nuclear consultative group. And President Yoon's visit to the U.S. reaches its climax with the two leaders proposing a toast to the ironclad Seoul-Washington alliance. The toast was delivered to nearly 200 guests, including actress Angelina Jolie and former Major League Baseball star Park Chan-ho. Good evening. It's 9 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. Following his summit with U.S. President Joe Biden, South Korean President Yoon Suk Yeol is today set to address U.S. Congress. And for that and more, let's connect to our Yoon Jung-min live in Washington, D.C. Jung-min?
Hi, Jiyoung. Yes, President Yoon's flurry of diplomacy will continue today, this time with U.S. lawmakers.
Yes, indeed. And the president is set to deliver a 30-minute speech in English, and it'll be interesting to see what he has to say. But for the time being, I'll hand things over to you and see you later in our newscast.
Right, thanks, Jiyoung. It's a little past 8 in the morning, April 27th, live from Washington, D.C. I'm Yoon Jung-min. President Yoon will be addressing the chamber at Capitol Hill in the coming hours. But first, let me introduce our panel this morning. I'm joined by Andrew Ya, Senior Fellow and the SK Korea Foundation Chair at the Brookings Institution's Center for East Asia Policy Studies, and Kim Do-yeon, Arirang's Presidential Office Correspondent. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Good morning.
Morning, morning. So, Andrew, first I want to ask you, how do you assess the Washington Declaration announced yesterday by the leaders of South Korea and the U.S.?
Right, so this is one of the key deliverables of the U.S.-ROK summit, and I think it shows that, first, the alliance is really in a tight, ironclad position, but there's been some concerns about extended deterrence on the side of the Koreans, and I think the United States really wanted to show that we are listening to South Korea and that we will give additional assurances. There's going to be a new nuclear consultative group, but there'll also be additional strategic assets like a nuclear submarine that will come. So I think that this is a strong sign, both symbolically and substantively, in strengthening the extended deterrence piece of the alliance relationship.
Right. And to you, Do-yeon, President Yoon will be addressing U.S. Congress in coming hours. So what would be the key words of his 30-minute-long English speech?
Well, the key word is going to be liberal democracy and freedom. I mean, what other better place are there in the rest of the world to speak about that? But one thing to note is that it's an English speech, right? So, and it's a long speech, and he's got all the spotlight, and no one's off the hook. Even Emmanuel Macron had to deliver English speech at not had to, but he chose to at the Congress. So I think that's a fun point to watch for viewers, because, you know, the message is going to be very similar, but the way it's delivered, and these are lawmakers that are voted as to represent their constituents. So it's a different atmosphere from just two leaders getting together for a summit. It's a little different appeal to U.S. for a Korean leader. So
was he practicing a lot, the speech?
I mean, I try to ask that to,
what does the presidential office say?
Yeah, I mean, those inside the presidential office, I asked them a lot, like, is he, practicing English? And they said, you know what, just wait and you'll see.
Oh, okay, we will see. We will talk more about that later, but first take a look at the day's headlines. Here in Washington, D.C., President Yoon Suk Yeol and his U.S. counterpart Joe Biden held their summit just yesterday over a range of key security and economic issues. Our top office correspondent Oh Soo-young covers key remarks shared by the two leaders.
Putting the alliance in action towards the future. President Yoon Suk Yeol and Joe Biden's joint statement on Wednesday ranged from traditional security and trade relations to addressing new emerging challenges as a global comprehensive strategic alliance.
우리 양국은 자유와 민주주의라는 깊은 뿌리를 토대로 지난 70년간 도전과 위기를 함께 이겨나가며 강력하고 회복력 있으며 지속 가능한 가치 동맹을 일궈냈습니다.
At a joint press conference after their 80-minute summit, the two commanders-in-chief first reaffirmed the strength of the ironclad 70-year military alliance. Amid North Korea's growing nuclear and missile threats, they issued the Washington Declaration, which includes the creation of a new nuclear consultation group and more regular visits of U.S. strategic assets to the Korean Peninsula. Major economic points included close consultations on the impact of U.S. industrial policies on South Korean firms, along with separate documents on achieving economic security by cooperating on high-tech sectors and supply chains of critical and emerging technologies. The two sides also issued a strategic cybersecurity cooperation framework and agreed to explore both commercial and military ventures on space tech to meet new forms of security threats in the virtual and space domains. Furthermore, to foster synergy between future generations, the two sides agreed to enhance institutional efforts for exchange, including programs for young people and STEM students. Based on their shared values of liberal democracy, Yoon and Biden declared they would make joint efforts to bring peace and stability for the international community.
We both understand that our democracies and our people are our greatest source of strength, and working together, they make our nation stronger and more effective. From tracking the climate crisis and strengthening our effort to fight it, and strengthening global health.
In terms of their shared values on global issues, the two leaders condemned Russia's invasion of Ukraine and, in the strongest possible terms, Moscow's actions against civilians and critical infrastructure. While further aid was not announced, they noted that they are supporting Ukraine through political, security, humanitarian and economic assistance. Calling for peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait, the two leaders also opposed unilateral revisionist attempts in the Indo-Pacific region, citing unlawful maritime claims, the militarization of reclaimed features, and forceful activities. Going forward, Yoon and Biden further committed to strengthening cooperation both mutually and trilaterally with Japan to make the Indo-Pacific region prosperous, connected, secure and resilient. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News, Washington, D.C.
The Washington Declaration, unveiled by the leaders, involves stronger extended deterrence and an overwhelming response in case of any nuclear attack from North Korea. Choi Min-jung takes a look.
South Korea and the United States have agreed to develop an even stronger mutual defense relationship. At Wednesday's summit meeting, Presidents Yoon and Biden announced a joint statement dubbed the Washington Declaration, which is aimed at strengthening extended deterrence against North Korea's evolving threats. Outlining the statement at a joint press conference following the summit, the presidents reaffirmed their commitment to strengthening their military capabilities.
한미 양국은 북한의 핵 공격 시 즉각적인 정상 간 협의를 갖기로 했으며 이를 통해 미국의 핵무기를 포함하여 동맹의 모든 전력을 사용한 신속하고 압도적이며 결정적인 대응을 취하기로 약속했습니다.
The Washington Declaration is a prudent step to reinforce extended deterrence and respond to advancing DPRK nuclear threat. Look, a nuclear attack by North Korea against the United States or its allies or partisans or partners is unacceptable and will result in the end of whatever regime were to take such an action.
The two presidents also announced the establishment of a new nuclear consultative group to engage in deeper cooperative decision-making on nuclear deterrence. Under the terms of the NCG, the two countries will share information on nuclear assets and intelligence and jointly plan responses and exercises.
At times of emergency on the Korean Peninsula, we will discuss joint extended deterrence and implementation plans that combine South Korea's advanced conventional forces with US nuclear forces. We will immediately report the results to the heads of both countries.
Biden also acknowledged that there is even closer cooperation, but made clear that this does not mean the U.S. will station nuclear weapons on the peninsula. He also underscored that the U.S. has the absolute authority to use nuclear weapons. However, U.S. officials did say that Washington is planning strategic visits of U.S. nuclear-armed submarines to South Korea, a move not seen since the 1980s. Pundits have assessed that Biden is committed to giving Seoul a central role in strategic planning, as South Korea reaffirmed its commitment to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty by putting aside efforts to pursue its own nuclear arsenal. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
Foreign media outlets have been quick to cover announcement of the Washington Declaration. Some say South Korea has gained a lot, while others say it's not enough. Kim Keon shares various responses.
Major news outlets in the U.S. say that the Washington Declaration and the establishment of the Nuclear Consultative Group will give more power to Seoul in Washington's use of nuclear weapons. The New York Times reports that President Joe Biden has given Seoul a central role for the first time in the strategic use of nuclear weapons in case of conflict with North Korea. CNN also said that the Biden administration deeply wanted to avoid deploying missiles on the Korean Peninsula, nor make Seoul develop its own nuclear weapons, and that this has led to the White House reassuring Seoul of its role. The Wall Street Journal, meanwhile, pointed at some limitations of the agreement. It says although the declaration could relieve Seoul's anxiety, it would not be enough in the long run, especially if North Korea continues to strengthen its military capabilities. The Japanese government responded to the news in a positive note, saying that joint efforts to expand Washington's deterrence will contribute to bringing peace and stability in the region, adding that Japan will also closely cooperate. Japan's Yomiuri Shimbun and Kyodo News said the outcome of the declaration reflects Washington's intention to show that Seoul doesn't need to become a nuclear state to protect itself. China didn't give an official response, but Beijing's English media mouthpiece Global Times warned ahead of the summit that Seoul's pro-American diplomatic policy will only bring big threats to the Korean Peninsula. Kim Mo-kyun, Arirang News.
On the economic front, the allies agreed to seek mutually beneficial investments and launch a dialogue on core technology. Lee Dae-hyun with more.
South Korea deepens its technology partnership with the U.S. During the South Korea-U.S. summit, the two countries' top leaders made a joint statement where they pledged to establish a next-generation critical and emerging technologies dialogue led by their national security advisors. This dialogue will be held every year, with the first talks to come in the second half of this year.
The dialogue will help establish digital technology standards and regulation while closely cooperating in sectors such as AI, digital tech, biotech, open LAN, blockchain, and cybersecurity.
Following the statement, the presidential office said, as technology and national security have become inseparable, the significance of tech cooperation between the two countries is increasing. This dialogue is to expand public and private cooperation between Seoul and Washington on leading-edge semiconductors, batteries, and quantum technology. Top officials from the two countries also noted further cooperation on artificial intelligence, biotechnology, medical AI, and biomanufacturing. People-to-people exchange programs for young talents were also discussed. South Korea's Ministry of Education said the two countries have decided to invest in the Korea-U.S. Educational Exchange Initiative for Youth in STEM, which is short for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math, by injecting $30 million each into the program. They will shortlist over 2,000 young talents in science and technology who will take part in this initiative. Special exchange programs for university students studying science and engineering will also be rolled out. The ministry says it will work with its U.S. counterparts in order to successfully launch the program in 2024. Meanwhile, after the summit, the leaders of the two countries said they will continue to have close consultations to ensure the U.S. CHIPS Act and the Inflation Reduction Act encourage mutually beneficial corporate investment. When asked whether attempts to restrict China's expansion in chip production are having a heavy toll on South Korea, U.S. President Joe Biden responded that these acts are a win-win for both Seoul and Washington, as they are helping economic growth in the U.S. while creating jobs in South Korea.
I don't think at least we don't, and I don't think so far, most of the South Korean companies believe that there's somehow a U.S. effort to slow them down, prevent their growth, or anything like that. We'd like to see them grow.
President Yoon Suk Yeol also welcomed more investment in batteries, chips, and EVs, adding that his counterpart would consider more U.S. investment in Korean businesses. Lee Dae-hyun, Arirang News.
Beyond security on land and economy, the leaders of South Korea and the U.S. have agreed to enhance security in cyberspace as well as outer space while promoting ventures into the next frontier. Moon Hae-ryun reports.
In commemoration of the 70th anniversary of the alliance between South Korea and the United States, the two presidents discussed extending the alliance in cybersecurity and space exploration during the summit. In recognition of rising cybersecurity threats, the Strategic Cybersecurity Cooperation Framework has been established. It's an extension of the Mutual Defense Treaty in cyberspace, a bilateral defense agreement that establishes the commitment of the U.S. and South Korea to provide mutual defense support in case of an attack from a third party. The framework establishes the need to prioritize cybersecurity as a national policy and strategic priority through the sharing of information regarding cyber threats and building a civil-military academic partnership for cyber training, research, and development. Cybersecurity has been a key issue for South Korea in recent times with illegal cryptocurrency activities and cyber threats from North Korea. During his stay in the U.S., President Yoon also visited NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center with U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris. With the third launch of the Korean space rocket Nuri carrying 8 satellites coming up next month, he was able to see how satellites are used by NASA to monitor climate change, further demonstrating the importance of developing space programs at home and collaboration with American aeronautics research. Harris also mentioned South Korea's lunar orbiter Danuri, which was launched last year on board a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket from Florida, as a stepping stone for further collaboration in space exploration.
With regard to this afternoon here at Goddard, we discussed our cooperation on the issue of space exploration. Notably, last year, South Korea placed a satellite in lunar orbit that carries a high-resolution camera from NASA and will continue to work to search for water on the moon. South Korea will soon fly payloads through NASA's Commercial Lunar Payload Services Program. I like to think of it as our version of a rideshare program for space exploration.
NASA's Deputy Administrator and South Korea's Minister of Science and ICT signed a joint statement of intent to further cooperate in science and exploration. In addition to expanding the alliance to space exploration, Yoon and Biden agreed to work on space security collaboration, as well as clarifying the recent policy that eased U.S. export restrictions for satellites, a move that greatly benefits South Korea's space launch industry. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
South Korean First Lady Kim Keon Hee met on Wednesday with North Korea experts and defectors to discuss the human rights issues in North Korea at the Old Korean Legation Museum. Also present was the mother of Otto Warmbier, a college student from the U.S. who visited North Korea and was imprisoned on a charge of government subversion. After a month of detention, he was returned home in a vegetative state and later died. While offering condolences to Warmbier's mother, Kim highlighted the need for the international community to work together to improve and address the human rights problems in North Korea. The grand finale of Wednesday's White House Reception Summit and press conference was a state dinner that had been catered to accommodate bilateral tastes and their shared culture. President Yoon Suk Yeol even showed off his singing skills. Han Sung-woo shares some of those scenes.
South Korean President Yoon Suk Yeol and First Lady Kim Keon Hee were welcomed with open arms by U.S. President Joe Biden and First Lady Jill Biden to a state dinner on Wednesday at the White House, where the two leaders reaffirmed their country's ironclad alliance.
To our partnership, to our people, to possibilities, and to the future of the Republic of Korea and the United States will create together. May we do it together for another 170 years.
여러분, 오늘은 한미 동맹이라는 이 네잎 클로버가 지난 70년의 영광을 넘어 새로운 뿌리를 뻗어나가는 역사적인 날로 기억되기 바랍니다. 미래로 힘차게 전진하는 한미 동맹을 위하여 건배를 제의합니다. 우리의 강철 같은 동맹을 위하여.
Among the nearly 200 guests invited were several American lawmakers and governors, Korean business executives, Hollywood icon Angelina Jolie, co-founder of Home Depot Arthur Blank, pachinko author Min-jin Lee, former Major League Baseball pitcher Park Chan-ho, and Olympic snowboarding champion Chloe Kim. While most guests entered from the Jacqueline Kennedy Garden in the East Wing, the Bidens welcomed President Yoon and First Lady Kim on a red carpet on the steps of the North Portico. Jill Biden recruited Korean-American celebrity chef Edward Lee to whip up a menu showcasing the best of America with a Korean touch: crab cakes, galbichim beef ribs, and, for dessert, banana splits. At the end of the dinner, the crowd enjoyed some unexpected entertainment as President Yoon took the stage to sing a personal favorite, Don McLean's 1971 hit, American Pie, to a standing ovation.
Well, we wanted to hear you sing it.
A long, long time ago, something touched me deep inside the day the music died.
Biden afterwards told Yoon he had no idea the Korean president could sing and gifted him a guitar signed by McLean himself. State dinners are known to be among the highest diplomatic honors the U.S. bestows on visiting dignitaries. Biden's first invitation for a state dinner went to French President Emmanuel Macron late last year. 한성우, Arirang News.
Let's delve deeper into what was discussed at the ROK-US summit. Andrew, Seoul and Washington agreed to overwhelming action against any nuclear attack from North Korea, and President Biden, in his words, he said it would be the end of the regime if the North Korea attacks with nuclear. So what message do you think they are trying to send here?
Right, so this line about ending the regime echoes what was in the U.S. National Defense Strategy, and I think they just want to foot stomp the point that if North Korea tries any kind of threat or provocation against South Korea, that the United States will be there to defend the Koreans. But not only that, that they're giving a message to Kim Jong-un that the alliance is strongly committed, and that any kind of threat, again, will be followed with a massive response from the U.S.
Some strong message there.
Yes.
And Tuyon, the summit was followed by a state dinner we just saw. And what was the atmosphere like between the two? I saw the President Yoon had a rather unexpected chance to sing American Pie.
Right, I mean, we just saw in the report, like, what went viral basically here was his chance to shine as a singer. But I think that really speaks what he was trying to do was the personal rapport that he was trying to appeal to the rest of the world that he has with Biden. And American Pie is a song that he's always said that he's liked to sing when he's out with his friends during his election campaign. So the Koreans that know President Yoon knew, right, that he can sing American Pie. But I do want to make another note that in his speech, there are two references about Irish heritage, right? And we all know that is well accepted by President Biden when, you make reference to his heritage. And the four-leaf clover was an example of that. So the state dinner was really a way to show the rest of the world that President Yoon is building a personal relationship with President Biden. So I think it reflected how the two leaders have come so far since last year when Yoon got inaugurated.
Right. And Andrew, on the economic front, in the joint statement, the two leaders agreed to continue close coordination to make sure the U.S. CHIPS Act and the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, are mutually beneficial, acknowledging recent efforts made to alleviate concerns by Korean businesses. What do you make of that?
So when we talk about emerging technology, economic security, these are issues for the future. And when you think about a global comprehensive strategic alliance, it's these newer issues that I think are gaining bigger attention. And because of just issues related to the Inflation Reduction Act and also the CHIPS Act, I think some of the new pledges, one of the deliverables was a new dialogue to address future generation technologies. I think having that dialogue will prevent further unexpected hiccups to come about. So I think this is one of the key deliverables as well to this summit.
All right. And Toyon, what is the top office saying about economic achievements during the Yoon's state visit to the U.S.? Yoon often calls himself as the country's #1 salesperson, and it seems like his sales diplomacy had something to show for.
Right. The biggest focus, though, was the IRA and CHIPS Act in terms of economy, and an official, at the top office says, this is where we set the tone, and the, technical details will be, decided by the people in that industry that work for the governments. But as I've said before, it's the numbers that will reflect his success in terms of how the public perceives it. And we have $6 billion nearly that have been announced for investment into Korea in different industries, right? But another thing to note is his meeting with Elon Musk.
Yeah.
Yes, that happened yesterday. Elon Musk traveled to D.C. He wanted to meet President Yoon, and President Yoon responded with a brochure that read, "Korea, the next gigafactory." So and Elon Musk's answer apparently was a positive answer, but it goes beyond EVs for Elon Musk. We have space industry that President Yoon is trying to foster in South Korea. So there's different opportunities with Elon Musk in terms of industries, and that was something that we can wait for if hopefully the meeting with Elon Musk yields to more tangible results as well.
Right. Andrew, President Biden thanked President Yoon for his, quote, political courage to mend Seoul-Tokyo ties. So what does South Korea gain from a change in its foreign policy?
Right, so this has to do more with the Indo-Pacific aspect of Yoon Suk Yeol's foreign policy, and he did want to become more engaged with other U.S. allies and like-minded partners. And of course, the missing link here was Japan. So by taking that courageous step and reaching out to Japan, I think this can help develop the trilateral U.S.-Japan-Korea relationship, but also let other countries know that Korea wants to be a part of a broader contingent that addresses issues within the region. And I also want to mention President Biden is probably aware that the issue with Japan has caused his domestic political standing to slide a bit before the summit. And I think Biden's shout out on that specific point on Japan was in part to help give President Yoon some political backing back at home.
Political backing there. All right. And the Korean president said he hopes for security and peace in the Indo-Pacific region, like you said. What do you read into this as the nation tries to up its contribution on the global stage?
Right. So it's not just the Indo-Pacific, but if you look at the Indo-Pacific strategy that the Yoon government released in December 2022, I mean, they talked about Africa, Europe, Latin America. So it's a very ambitious plan. But South Korea is the 10th largest economy in the world. It's depending on whose ranking you look at, it's anywhere between 6 to 10 in terms of defense spending. So it definitely punches above its weight, but sometimes that's not recognized. So I think that's what the Indo-Pacific strategy and Yoon's foreign policy goals are trying to address. Of course, the elephant in the room, or we should say the dragon and the bear in the room, is China and Russia, because we see South Korea becoming more implicated in global politics by aligning with the U.S. and other like-minded partners. And so that's something that I think will be a challenge for South Korea to navigate moving forward.
All right. And Tuyeon, before I let you go, what other diplomatic events await the South Korean leaders today? I heard he will be hosted by U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris and Secretary of State Antony Blinken for lunch, and he will be briefed by U.S. military leaders later in the day.
Right. Then that's for his D.C. trip in terms of defense and the summit. You're right. He has a briefing, which is unusual for a leader to be briefed by U.S. military officials. But he also has another event where he could really bump up the numbers. He's going to be meeting with a lot of representatives from the Motion Pictures Association. So that's another chance. And he's flying to Boston later in the day, and he will meet with academics, as he always does when he goes abroad. He likes to visit universities and really talk. But he's going to TUT this time around. We're going to Harvard and MIT. So at Harvard, he's going to talk about liberal democracy, and MIT, obviously, technology. So he's got a little more to do left, but it's almost, he's almost finished, and he can finally rest over the weekend. Yeah.
And go back home. All right. Andrew Ya from the Brookings Institution Center for East Asia Policy Studies, and Kim Do-yeon, our presidential office correspondent. We appreciate your time.
Wonderful to be here this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And for more of the day's other headlines, let's go back to the Arirang News studio in Seoul with our Ji-young. Ji-young.
Thank you, Jungmin, for that. That was our Yoon Jung-min live from Washington, D.C. Now on the economic front here in South Korea, Samsung has shared some dismal earnings figures for the first quarter of this year amid the lackluster performance in the global chip market. Meanwhile, operating profit for LG surpassed that of Samsung for the first time on the back of strong performance in home appliances. Our business correspondent Shin Ha-young has the latest.
First quarter profit for South Korean tech giant Samsung Electronics almost halved from the previous year amid continued sluggish global chip demand. The company on Thursday reported an operating profit of around 640 billion Korean won, which at the current rate is roughly $477 million, a dramatic drop of 95.5% on year. The figure dropped below the 1 trillion won level for the first time in 14 years. Sales for the same period plunged by about 18% on year to 63.7 trillion won or $47.5 billion. The latest results were mainly driven by weaker performance in the industry due to the global economic slowdown. Memory chip prices are falling as demand drops and inventories swell. In fact, operating losses for the company's chip business came to almost 4.6 trillion won or $3.4 billion. It's the first time Samsung's chip department has posted a deficit since the global financial crisis in 2009. Chip sector sales came to around 14 trillion won or $10 billion, down nearly 50% from the previous year. The company predicts sluggish demand to continue in the second quarter as well, but to gradually rise in the second half of this year, with performance expected to recover during that period. On the other hand, another tech giant, LG Electronics, also posted an on-year decline in its operating profit, but was strong enough to surpass Samsung. The company's first quarter operating profit came to around 1.5 trillion won, or roughly $1 billion, down by almost 23% from the previous year. Its sales saw a slight decrease amounting to 20 trillion won or around $15.3 billion, marking the second biggest among any other Q1 sales. The results were due to its strong performance in home appliances, which exceeded the 1 trillion won level for the first time. 신하영, Arirang News.
South Korea, having its own version of the aerospace group Lockheed Martin, is imminent, with the country's Hanwha group getting conditional approval to acquire Daewoo Shipbuilding and Marine Engineering. The company's plan is to become a global leader in the defense and energy sector. The Fair Trade Commission's decision came on Thursday, 4 months after Hanwha's proposal to acquire a 49.3% stake and managerial control in DSME, offering roughly $1.5 billion. The country's antitrust regulator has approved the plan under certain conditions. They would be banned from supplying equipment at discriminatory prices, banned from transferring trade secrets of competing companies with each other, and required to equally provide information to all parties. And at the last plenary session of this month, South Korea's National Assembly passed the much-debated Nursing Act, as well as a revision to the Medical Service Act. Our political correspondent, Lee Si-hoo, reports.
The opposition-controlled National Assembly at its plenary session on Thursday passed the contentious Nursing Act despite strong opposition from the ruling bloc.
I declare the passing of the revision to the Nursing Act alternative with 179 approvals and 2 abstentions among the 181 present.
Now in the 300-person assembly, 170 seats as of Thursday were occupied by the main opposition Democratic Party and 115 the ruling People Power Party. The members of the PPP did not participate in the vote, leaving the plenary chamber right before the voting after delivering speeches against the bill. It's expected the PPP will suggest President Yoon Suk Yeol veto the bill. The opposition-led Nursing Act seeks to improve nurses' working conditions by defining their roles and duties separately from the current Medical Service Act, which puts them, quote, under the guidance of physicians. It also defines the duties of nurses and nursing assistants separately. The act has been opposed by doctors and nursing assistant groups who fear the act will lead to confusion in the public health system. The groups have previously warned of a general strike in case the bill passes the plenary session. Also passed by the parliament on Thursday is a revision to the Medical Service Act, which seeks to revoke the licenses of medical doctors who have been found guilty of any crime that has led to imprisonment. With the PPP not participating in the vote in opposition, the bill passed with 154 approvals, 1 disapproval, and 22 abstentions. The bill also seeks to revoke the license of a medical professional who has cheated on the national certification exam. The government and the PPP have proposed a plan of arbitration seeking to limit the types of crimes that would lead to disqualification to just 3: medicine-related, sex offenses, and violent crimes. But this was opposed by the opposition bloc. The parliament, however, was together in passing of the General Act on Overseas Koreans, which calls for policies to support and respect South Korean people living outside the country. The bill, which earned bipartisan approval with just 1 abstention, sets the basis for new policymaking for overseas Koreans. Lee Si-hoo, Arirang News.
BTS member Suga is on the road to perform for his fans all over the world. His first solo world tour, titled Suga August D-Day Tour, began on Wednesday local time at the UBS Arena in New York City. There he performed his recent single release D-Day, as well as songs from his various mixtapes, including August D and D2. The tour will reach 9 countries over the next 2 months, including Indonesia, Thailand, Singapore, and South Korea. Suga said he's been training relentlessly for this solo tour and that he hopes his fans will enjoy the concerts. This is his first world tour as a solo artist and also the first BTS member to go on the tour by themselves.
Tomorrow will be another day with wide temperature gaps. Most regions will see a difference of more than 10 degrees between the lows and the highs, while Seoul will see a gap of 12 degrees. Other regions such as Jiangsu and Gyeongju will see a bigger fluctuation. Another round of spring rain is in the forecast. Showers will start from the south of the country starting tomorrow, including the south coast and Jeju Island. By Saturday, the entire nation will be influenced by the rain system. For Washington, D.C., partly cloudy to overcast skies are expected. Lows will be starting off at 11 degrees. Balmier conditions are expected for the daytime with highs of 22. Inland regions will see clear skies for the morning hours. Tomorrow, Seoul and Gwangju will be starting off at 9 degrees. More clouds will be building up for the daytime. Maximum temperatures in Seoul will be hiking up to 21 degrees. Daejeon 23, Gyeongju will be warm at 25 degrees. Until early next week, typical spring weather will prevail for much of South Korea. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is all for this Thursday night's newscast. But do stay with us for our special coverage in Washington, D.C., where President Yoon Suk Yeol is to address the United States Congress soon. Bye for now.